Hi all, thank you for joining us in this crazy week in Madrid with all many things happening. The topic of this session is going to be the early stage European investment landscape with a special focus in competitiveness at stake. Competitiveness is a very important word right now, and I want to highlight and start with a simple idea. This conversation is not only going to be about capital, which of course is important, but it's also going to be about geography. It's going to be about where the founders decide to start, where the science become companies, and where the industrial leaders of the European Union are going to be, and if decide to start here in Europe or just go somewhere else. I believe that in Europe right now we have many of the ingredients. We have science, we have industrial knowledge, we have ambitious founders, we have very sophisticated investors, and of course we have procurements and public policies. But still, something happens when the companies reach the scale stage and the growth stage, and we're going to see some data that shows this. So this is why this conversation is going to be important. We're going to discuss what it leaks in the companies and in the system where the companies reach this scale-up stage. We're going to have this conversation from two different perspectives. First is the perspective of the private and investors and financial perspective, what founders see, what investors seek, how Europe can compare globally. And of course, we're also going to have the public perspective and ecosystem, how regions or governments can help to reduce the friction of growth and to implement better policies so that companies stay within the region. Of course, right now this is a good moment to have this conversation because the European Union, especially the startup and scale-up Commission of the European Union, just established some 26 actions. So we're going to also talk about the EU initiative, the European Innovation Act, and so many other things as the European Scale-Up Fund and other initiatives. And last but not least, we are not going to forget the elephants in the rooms that we have right now in matters of competitiveness, which is artificial intelligence and the tech, which is no longer theoretical, but is necessary for a competition. So I'm going to start with a brief question. If we have, as Europe, all the ingredients, what is exactly missing in the recipe for the growth of our companies? I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourself, please, from the perspective that you're in, and tell us, with your presentation, one thing that you believe Europe is doing really well, and one thing that you think is holding us back.
Julien?
No.
No? I'm Julien.
No.
French, as you can guess or hear. And I spent my life working for big tech. I was at Microsoft for 6 years in France, in the US, and then I spent 11 years at Facebook. I was a very active business angel, mostly in Europe, and I became a VC at 20 VC a few years ago, and I invest in seed and pre-seed founders. So I invest as early as possible in great software people going after great software problems, and most of the time in Europe. And to go back to your question, look, I'm an optimistic, and I would not be doing this job if I was not optimistic. But I think we are really at an inflection point when it comes to the startup scene and the investment scene in Europe. We start to see things that are happening every day or every week that never happened before in Europe. You know, I'm thinking of Mistral. I'm thinking of some of the. Yesterday we had a $1.2 billion exit in Germany again, and we had another one 3 months ago. I saw the news about Factorial today. So I think what we need is just time to catch up. Maybe not to catch up, but time to be more and more, I would say, relevant and to build that ecosystem from the founders, the science around the founders, the university, the research labs, the business angels, the seed funds, the growth funds, the liquidity market, to have the entire chain of the ecosystem. We were nowhere 20 years ago when I started in this business, but I think it's going much better than it used to, and I think it's a good reason to be optimistic because all of the pieces of the puzzles across Europe are coming together.
Perfect, thank you, Julian. Luis?
Well, morning, and for me, I'm Spanish, as you can guess as well. From my point of view, first of all, I am the main director of Invest in Madrid. Invest in Madrid is a regional office in charge of promoting the FDI in the region. We are very committed to increase our international position in the specific countries that we are trying to boost. And for that reason, it's a pleasure to be here this week. It's a pleasure to host all these people here in Madrid this week in a very busy and dynamic week that I think that shows very well the booming moment that Madrid is living. And in this context, and going through your question, I think that Madrid shows perfectly one of the best points or keys that Europe has in order to increase this startup ecosystem, and has to do with talent. Okay, I think that Europe, one of the great assets has to do with talent. In Madrid is one of the key things that we are trying to boost. We have a very important network of universities, private and public. We have a very focus on a high value-added industry, and that's the reason why we represent the second region after Ile-de-France with more people trained in and working in tech companies. And for that reason, we think that this asset, we need to care of it, and we need to continue to work with it. And on the other side of the coin, and it's one of the main priorities of our government, we think that Europe has a very important duty with regulation. In our point of view, regulation has a very important impact in the size of the market and the way that the market is carried out, and also in how to jump between the early stage and the growth. So I think that these are the two main assets or priorities, challenges that we expect from Madrid, and that we are very, very happy to share with all of you in this nice conversation.
Okay, very interesting. So we are talking about time, talent, regulation. Many topics are coming out. So let me put some data on the table so we can keep discussing about this diagnosis of the European market. According to the European Commission data, Europe launches almost the same number of startups that in the US. But for some reason, something happens in the next step. To be more specific, we have around 35,000 startups in Europe, but only 3,400 reach the scale-up stage. So as you see, there is no problem in the European innovation or in the creation of a startup. We are seeing the problem in the next stage. So what do you guys think? Is it a market, go-to-market problem? Is it a capital problem? Is it a fragmentation of our regulation problem? What are your thoughts?
It's not capital. I think if you start a company, wherever you are in Europe, it's easy to find money. You can apply to IC, you can apply to Project Europe. There are many, many people looking for investment opportunities, especially at the earlier stages. That used to be a problem, though. Finding money at pretty much every stage was a problem until a few years ago. But now, if you cannot find money as an entrepreneur, it means first, you should not be raising money, or that you're not really trying, because there are many people. Again, the American investors that are looking for opportunities in Europe, and we compete with them on some early stage deals in Serbia, in Czech Republic, things that never happened before. Again, so I don't think money is a problem. I would say it's the experience that sometimes is a problem. We have maybe the first or second generation of founders with exits, people who've been through that experience of hypergrowth, people who worked for some of the best European companies who exited, who are starting something new. And so in the US, they started that 40, 50 years ago. So they have multiple generations and mafias and diasporas of founders, business angels. In Europe, we are only at the first or second generation, but it's getting better. And that's why, again, it's a good reason to be optimistic. But what we need is that hyper-growth experience, people who've been through the rodeo once or twice before, who are starting companies again.
Well, I agree, and I will add to this comment that we think that there are another two important matters things that matter in this context. One has to do with the in our opinion, and what we see in Spain, the mindset and the culture of people, and specifically young people. We need to boost this, the way not to have fear or to feel fear with the risk. We need to, in comparison with other regions and countries and big countries from US probably, we need to work with young people in order to increase the willingness to increase the startups and to be businessmen. I think this is a very important point. We need to think out of the box, and maybe in that early stage will be more volume of companies and ideas. And on the second hand, we think that in order to bring, as you said, we do not think, and we have several funds in the early stage of the startups, but we need to work, in our opinion, in the jump to growth or to late stages, and there the size of the market, how we are organized, and the probability or the chance to get to bigger markets is one of the things that we think that should work together in order to be very competitive with other big countries.
That at the growth stage, if you're looking
there is a problem with the microphone.
Yeah. At the growth stage, as you said, it's true that if you're looking for money, you will have to go and find it in the US.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Yeah.
Things are changing, but you will have the big money, the big growth money is still coming from the US.
So I'm going to push you on that idea, actually, because I think that the scale and the growth stage is the topic about this conversation. And going back again to the data, according to the European Commission, the startup valuation of the European companies are almost 20% of the valuation of the US companies, which is way lower than we could expect, and 60% of the China startups company. What do you think that an European startup will need to compete globally, and how do you think that the governments can promote a better valuations and better growth for these companies?
Look, there is a discount compared to American companies and probably as well Chinese companies, even if there's less liquidity or it's less, it's not as easy to exceed these companies if you're not investing there. So there is a discount, but again, the traction is not the same, the teams are not the same, the liquidity, which is very important, is not the same. And so again, we will catch up, but we should not be comparing ourselves to the US market today. We should compare ourselves to where we were just a few years ago. And that's, again, one more reason to be optimistic. There is a discount, but I think we should be okay with it. And again, when you look at the most amazing success story in tech for the last 5 years, it's Anthropic, a company that did not exist 4 years ago. But it's going to go public for probably $1 trillion. It's not going to happen anytime soon in Europe. And that's okay, but we have other reasons to be optimistic, and we have to be okay with that discount for now.
So you believe it's not a problem right now? You shouldn't. Okay.
No, it's apples and oranges.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we are as well optimistic, and we think that we need to analyze where we, like 10 years ago, the progression that we have made, and now, and it's I think very good news how we have now specific funds that they weren't before here, and companies going on, and how new ideas or startups are getting more and more powerful from the European context that I think that it wasn't so much 10 years ago. I think that we need to offer, to at least the public perspective, we need to offer an ecosystem, a legal framework, a way of doing things to companies and startups specifically in the early and the growing stage, with a key word for us that has to do with speed. We need to guarantee that people with startups have very great ideas, with very fast thoughts, and we need to guarantee that the way that they need to fulfill specific commitments and the different milestones that they need to fulfill in order to grow and to get size has to be very quick. And for that reason, we pushed from Madrid, of course, but also from Spain, for the European Commission to guarantee the new act that for us is very important, with specific tools that guarantee this speed in order not to freeze ideas that are in a very nice way, that maybe they have also capital, but they too need to fulfill several requirements that are quite quite difficult for them.
But I think if you look at the valuations, it's easy to feel sorry. But if you look at Revolut, a company that did not exist 12 years ago, from 0 to 120 billion, and a fantastic product and a fantastic business. 11 Labs, 0 to $11 billion, fantastic product, fantastic business. In France, we have Mistral, which is a big AI neo-lab and also a business, from 0 to 14 in 4 years. So that's what we should look at, and that's what we should try to replicate instead of trying to build the next Anthropic or to have the same valuation.
Okay, so now...
Yeah, in this, and going through this comment, 11 Labs opened a new office in Madrid 1 month ago, and specifically when we talk to them, we want to reach this market. Talent for us is very important. Now that people can live in any place of the world is one of the things that we are trying to get to be a very important talent hub. And it's a very nice example. Mistral as well, as you said, they went to France. We hold with them a meeting here in Madrid because they are trying to think and analyze this market. And we need to going to the first idea. We need to get advantage of our assets in order to get these ideas a reality and to push more examples of those. So I think that those that you mentioned are quite good examples for that.
So Julian is optimistic, but still believes that capital is still missing in Europe. Luis thinks that we are losing speed, although we have other ingredients than talent. And I think it's the time to introduce the measures that the European Commission is working to improve the startup and scale-up ecosystem in Europe. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but last year Ursula von der Leyen just launched a very ambitious plan towards this, around 26 actions in 5 areas that they identified were basically the killing points of the startups, which are talent, capital raising, access to market. This is a very important thing in Europe as our market is fragmented compared to other bigger markets, and also expansion and regulations. All of these topics has come in this conversation already. So one of the initiatives is the change of a corporate legal system with the introduction of the EU Inc., which is going to work similar to the Delaware LLC that the founders normally choose when they move or they relocate into the US. Do you think that these sort of measures are really going to be catalytic, or are we missing other measures to have?
For me, it's a nice to have. It's great. I'm glad it's happening, but it's a nice to have. That's not something we even think about when we make investments. And the one thing I think that is a big problem in Europe is the fact that the big companies especially, it's not so true for the smaller companies who tend to buy software and to invest in software, but the big companies in Europe, they take forever to buy software from local companies. Let me give you 2 examples. I invested in a company in Paris called Pigment, another one in Belgium called TechWolf. They sell massive, very complex software to the biggest companies on the planet. And to give you an example, it took 6 months for Pigment to sign Coca-Cola in the US, Coca-Cola Inc., global deal, 6 months, a very big, complicated deal for them. And if you try to do the same thing with like one of the top 10 or top 20 French companies, you would need 4 years. Because they still believe they have to buy American. They still don't trust the quality and the innovation of the local players, because you don't get fired for choosing IBM or Microsoft or Oracle. And I think this is where we have a problem.
So cultural.
Yeah, it's cultural, and trusting the local ecosystem, taking some risk, seeing software as an investment with a return on investment versus a cost that you have to limit to the max. So when that will change, I think it will create a lot of value for European startups, and I think it is changing, to be fair, but this is where we have a problem. And that's why we are encouraging our founders to build in Europe and sell to the US as fast as possible, when that makes sense. Like the Israeli companies have done forever, because the local market is not enough. But you build there, you benefit from the amazing talents, the lifestyle that you can have in Europe, but you sell software in places where people do want to buy software as fast as possible and have no problem taking risk buying software from young companies.
This is interesting because we have seen that many of the relocations of companies outside the European Union are partial, are not total relocation. Normally, the talent and the research and development stays in Europe, and only like what we're looking at abroad is either market or either capital. So this is very interesting, the idea that you put on the table.
Yeah, and I think that we need to take into account two tools. One, Daniela, you explained before, that is a new act that, from our point of view, it has very interesting ideas and they're good news in the difficult European legal context. So we think that is a very good news with different tools, not only the act, but there are several tools such as a fund, for example, that we think that it will play an important role. And in the second hand, we need to take into account as well, in our opinion, the strategic autonomy idea. Okay, and as you said, we need to, due to this difficult geopolitical challenges, we think that is now the time to boost the relocation of industries. We need to. We think that is the time to be proud of the European industrial footprint, and that we need to connect the high value-added industry, and it's one of the priorities of our government, with startups. So we think that in this context, we need to boost that footprint. We need to produce here. We need to sell outside, and we need to be convinced that we have very, very important knowledge and know-how, of course, but also very, very good products. So I think that two ideas mixed and in a very open context. Of course, we know that US have, depending on the month, they have specific regulations regarding import and export policies. But we think that two assets and that two tools are the way that we can compete with bigger markets.
Taking that idea, we have to talk about the elephants in the room right now. Competitiveness in Europe, it is not understand the same if we don't talk about artificial intelligence and deep tech, of course, which is no longer theoretical. I want to keep this conversation out of the typical if we are still on time for the race or not. The European Commission already put in a plan with 200 billion euros addressed to semiconductors, AI, and other sort of critical technologies, and also to build gigafactories within the European Union. The question will be, in which kind of sectors or in which way do you believe that we still can compete with artificial intelligence and deep tech?
It's a big question.
You're the investor. What are you looking for?
So it has to start with the compute. And as you said, a lot of companies and governments are doing investments there. But if we don't have the compute and the infrastructure, nothing is possible. Where I think we do have an edge is on the research side. We have amazing people from Europe who work for the best labs in the US coming back to Europe to start their companies. I just backed one in Czech Republic called BottleCap. But we see more and more people leaving DeepMind, people leaving some of the biggest software companies in Europe or American companies in Europe to start their own research labs, which will be building product, which will also be selling it through software or services, like Mistral wants to do. To be fair, we don't know if it will be software or services, but whatever works, because there is a demand for local AI, for sure, from governments, from the public sector. But as I said, everything starts with the compute, and this is where we need to catch up extremely fast. Because there is a world where we just don't have access to the available infrastructure if the big guys keep scaling.
Yeah, well, for us it's amazing how Madrid is getting more and more important in this context, and we have several examples in the last months of a specific sector that you mentioned, computing in Spain. There are several points in the geography with very important computing skills, and it's a pleasure to have a country so rich. San Sebastián in the Basque Country, Barcelona in Catalonia, and of course Madrid. So for us, it's a pleasure to have a rich country. But also we want to add these technologies with the specific sectors very, very under the umbrella of the high value-added industry. And in this context, for us, defense and aerospace is very important for us. We have two important keys here in Getafe and in Tres Cantos. Secondly, we have a very strong commitment in trying to improve our footprint in pharma sector, and we have several examples of US companies here with R&D branch, corporate branch, and production branch. And for us, that has to be the way that we compete. And thirdly, and for us it's very important as well, we are trying to increase our footprint in semiconductors. That for us is also a very connected to relocation policies of the European Union, and we are trying to do our best in order to get more investments in this context, in these sectors.
So do you guys think that right now, because of the context and the knowledge that we have, that you both got mentions, Europe should focus in know-how and deep tech and those sort of industrial know-how instead of other kind of solutions that already we may seem to have lost the race?
I would say yes, but not just that. You know, there is a hunger right now for European software, especially from governments and the public sector, which you don't see probably yet in the private sector. But it doesn't have to be only deep tech or pharma or super complicated stuff. Every flavor of software, I think, needs to exist at the European level and have a European flavor to it. And I think it's an opportunity for anyone building software, for SMBs, for big companies, applications, ERPs, vertical software. So that's why, again, I'm very optimistic, because for the first time there is a hunger to buy local software from the governments, and European companies and founders should jump onto it.
Yeah, maybe taking into account the global perspective, our experience says that in order to compete, we need to be very focused in a specific niche sector. So we think it's not easy, of course, but we need to mix the way of developing a wide range of verticals with a specific niche sectors that could get Europe in a very right position to be competitive around the world. We have analyzed different regions, very small regions, but very, very productive and very, very specialized in very niche sectors, and our experience says that we need to combine both perspectives in order to play a role in this difficult and very global world.
So this idea can connect in a way with Julian's idea about the trusting cultures and local ecosystem, and also building a niche. So it makes sense that you guys, from two different perspectives, private and public, agree at some point, right? So we are coming to the last of the session, and I want to end. Imagine there is a headline tomorrow about this conversation in South Summit, and this conversation brings up on the cover of the newspaper. What is the message that you want to transmit, like, quickly?
I mean, and that's probably the reason why we're having the South Summit here, and that we have so many people in the room. But it's time to build in Europe. I think some VCs in London just launched a campaign around that, time to build or built in Europe. But I think it's never been a better time to start a startup in Europe, in Madrid, but also in Paris, in London. The money is there, the business chances are there, the whole chain is there, and people are willing to give you a chance. And again, I would not have been able to say that 5 or 10 years ago, but the best time to build in Europe is today, which is great.
Well, I agree that we are in a very nice moment, and we are optimistic as well. And I think that we need to run and let people run as well, doing and carry out their business.
So I think the conclusion is clear. You both guys are optimistic about the situation and the landscape in Europe right now. We seem to have all the ingredients. We only are missing time. So let's give it still a try, and let's see what happens in some years after the implementation of the measures and the work of so many people. So let's see, and let's connect these assets with the market. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you guys.
Thanks for coming.